So the acronym UDL stands for the Universal Design for Learning. The UDL is a framework that focuses on eliminating the barriers in the classroom by using flexible curriculum that accommodates the needs and abilities of all learners. So I can use UDL in my classroom to know and understand the strengths and weaknesses of my students, and this allows me to be able to give my students specific learning goals and intervene when needed. So the acronym MTS stands for Multi-Tiered System of Support. MTS is a type of framework that schools can use to help provide support for their students in all areas, such as academic, social, emotional, and behavioral. So I can use MTS in my classroom by identifying which of my students may need additional support, provide them with additional instruction, and work together with the school to improve my students' outcome. So the acronym SEL stands for Social Emotional Learning. SEL focuses on teaching and developing and applying students with the necessary skills to manage their emotions. So I can integrate SEL in my classroom by teaching my students how to manage their feelings and emotions and providing them with the tools and resources to achieve this goal. So one way that I can accomplish this in my classroom is by starting the day off with a check-in. So I use a daily check-ins emotion chart that provides them with the opportunity to identify their feelings, describe the reason behind their feelings, and indicate how they slept the night before. It's a really cool way, especially I find in preschool and kindergarten, and it's just this really great tool that's at Lakeshore, and it's maybe like a big rectangle sheet. You can have one that the teacher can use, and each individual student can have one. They can just get like a whiteboard marker, and then they just either circle it, they can write it as well too, and it's really helped me in my classroom, especially once I get all of my students in, just to see where they're at in the morning. And then we do it at the end of the day as well too, just to check in to see, has their day improved? Did their day get worse? What could I do as a teacher to help them learn their feelings and be able to express it even further? And so I also like to do daily check-ins because I can use calming strategies to help my students develop one's emotions and behaviors. So like, for example, if one of my students comes into the classroom and they're feeling a very particular way, I have them touch their nose, touch their head, touch their tummy, take a breath. And then we go over to our feelings chart and I have them identify that feeling that is making them, let's say if they're worried about something, they can connect to the face that's on the photo, and then we can read a book that helps them even further describe that emotion. And so some of my favorite social emotional learning books are What Are You Feeling? Kindness is My Superpower, and The Color Monster of Story of Emotions. So in my classroom, we actually don't say, oh, I'm sad. Oh, I'm feeling mad. We use colors. So, oh, I'm feeling blue. Oh, I'm feeling red. Oh, I'm feeling green. Oh, I'm feeling purple. This has really helped with some of my students because they haven't really quite connected the word and the emotion together, but colors and emotions have seemed to really have worked. And so it's just one, and I don't use it for all of my students, it's just a few of them that prefer to state the color rather than state the emotion. So in chapter 5, I really enjoyed reading it because it focused on the importance of inclusive practices that should be embedded into your teaching and in the classroom. So it's important that teachers support all learners, they're welcoming, and they have that inclusive learning environment for all students. And it works together as a system with the school for everyone. And so I really like that because it's not just within the classroom. They have that multi-tier of system of support. There's the classroom, and then, they have maybe, let's say, like all the teachers within that department, kindergarten, can work together. And then they have the school as a whole. And so I just enjoy that because especially when it comes to a student who needs that additional support, it doesn't fall just on the teacher, but there's so many additional tools and resources and community that can really help that child be successful in the classroom. So for me, I'm still learning to create this type of environment. Classroom environment, and I really felt that reading chapter 5 just gave me a lot more insight into my own teaching practices, and I really plan on leveling that playing field in my classroom to be able to give every student what they need by following the MTSS and UDL framework. And so chapter 6 main focus was on social emotional learning, which I love, especially as a preschool teacher. And so, I really feel like using this approach can help enhance my students' insight in the classroom and be able to navigate their emotions outside of school as well. it was really funny. I had one of my parents tell me, they're like, yeah, my son, was at dinner and did not like his food. And he like put his like fist on the table and said, I am feeling frustrated. And he knew what that meant because we have discussed about it. We connected it in like so many different ways what that feeling was. And then instead of having a complete tantrum, he just said, I'm feeling frustrated. And he was able to use certain sentences to be able to communicate with his family how he was feeling. So I just really like that. And I also enjoyed learning about the SEL competencies and the role that each one plays within the framework. Working in pre-kindergarten, I work with a lot of students to become self-aware, to gain social awareness, to build relationship skills, and to grow in their decision-making choices. So I start this right off at the beginning of the year because I want to eliminate any communication barriers that may prevent my students from being able to express their feelings. And so there's so many different tools that you can use as a teacher, such as having them use their voice, having them draw a picture, show their emotions on a feeling chart, having a calming corner. So there's just like so many different ways that, we can really create that social emotional learning environment for our students. And I really plan on using like the insight and knowledge that I gained from this chapter and applying it into my own classroom even further, because I can create very specific SEL lesson plans that focus on like a certain area. So let's say I want my students to build on their relationship skills. Well, then I can do a lesson that's specifically on communication and then how relationship skills and communication are kind of together. So that's really cool. And I also really loved listening to the episode 5 podcast because it really touched base on a subject that's very close to my heart and I'm really passionate about. I really enjoyed learning how important it is to create an inclusive learning environment that uses the UDL and MTSS framework to support all learners. So I can integrate these learnings in my classroom by teaching the whole child and addressing the academic, behavioral, and social emotional learning practices. And for me as a teacher is that I need to create a classroom where my students are able to access these tools and resources in order to be successful. So this can be accomplished by removing any barriers, providing additional support, and offering intensive support if needed for the student. And so then after listening to the episode 6 podcast, I learned that it's important to teach students how to like regulate and recognize their emotions. So for me, it's the building blocks of social emotional learning is teaching children how to manage their emotions. And I do that daily in my classroom because I have so many kids that have so many feelings. And it really helps me to know what exactly they're feeling and then we can work through it. Then having a moment where they're just completely throwing a tantrum on the floor. I'm just like, no, tell me how you're feeling so then I can help you. And then it just, for me, it just eliminates any potential like big behavior moment that's going on. I'm still working through that personally right now in my classroom. I have a couple students that have just a lot of big feelings and big emotions. And so I'm still figuring out what way helps them best to be able to communicate how they're feeling. Because for me right now, all the different resources and tools that I've been using have not worked. So we're still just in this playing thing. So this morning I had texted a parent. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this today. What do you think? Do you think that's going to work with your son? And she was like, let's just try it out. I'm like, perfect. I love communicating with my parents as well too, exactly what I'm doing in the classroom so that they're aware of it and then they can talk about it with their child at home too to see if it actually worked with them. And so I can integrate these learnings in my classroom by teaching my students to manage their emotions and developing empathy and compassion through practical applications. So some practical social emotional learning techniques that are applied in my classroom is learning how to take turns in sharing, practicing giving positive affirmations throughout the day, and deep breathing exercises. I actually had one student that last year that loved giving positive affirmations, would be like sitting, building with his Legos, all of a sudden would shout across the room, hey, Emily, I really like the way that you build with the blocks today. It was just so sweet, and that's how my classroom was. And so I just really like to build my students to just be someone who's great at taking turns, really wonderful at sharing, really great at giving affirmations towards others and towards themselves as well too. Be like, wow, like I'm really good at writing my name. And also taking deep breaths. I like touch your nose, touch your head, touch your tummy, take a breath. Or we do blow out the candle. So there's just so many different things that we could do as teachers. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my video.